Hello and welcome, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in. In today's program, we look at Donald Trump's latest threat against the international business community and Iran's continued crackdown on women's freedoms. All this and more coming up, but first, a look at the headlines. Turkey accuses Israel of expansionist behavior against Syria in the disputed Golan Heights. This after Israel's government approved a plan to double the Israeli population in the annexed territory. South Korea's Constitutional Court begins reviewing the impeachment of President Yoon Suk-yeol. This is the second attempt by the opposition to remove Yoon from office after he imposed martial law in the country on the 3rd of December. Norway to provide Ukraine with $242 million to strengthen and modernize the Ukrainian Navy. The aid comes as the war between Russia and Ukraine nears the 3-year mark. Suspected militants gunned down at least 39 civilians in the West African nation of Niger. The country's military says the suspected gunman carried out the attack and fled into neighboring Burkina Faso. And drug cartels gunned down a mayor from the ruling party along with his 3 associates in central Mexico. According to the media, at least 38 mayors have been killed by drug cartels just this year. We begin in the United States, where President-elect Donald Trump has continued to promise to crack down against illegal immigration on day 1 of taking office. With Inauguration Day just about a month away, Donald Trump's rhetoric about deporting over 1 million migrants is increasing. This comes after the Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, released data of the number of illegal migrants who are reportedly being marked for deportation. According to the ICE document, 1.5 million migrants have been identified for deportation, with the highest number of undocumented residents being from Honduras, Guatemala, Mexico, and El Salvador. The list also includes thousands of migrants from Asia, particularly China and India. Now, the United States has about 7 million undocumented migrants living in the country, with the most being from Mexico, followed by El Salvador, India, Guatemala, and Honduras. Washington has already begun deporting some of the illegal immigrants, particularly those who have a criminal record or ties to drug cartels.
The first thing I thought was, I'm not going to sleep on the floor anymore. I'm not going to be cold anymore. I'm not going to be hungry anymore, and neither are my children. When it sank in that I was landing, that I was in Honduras. When I arrived, I went to my mother's house in Yoro, and when I arrived, I sat down and took a deep breath and said I was in Honduras again, and I couldn't believe it. The impact was very strong. It felt like getting hit by a bucket of cold water to realize that I had to start from scratch in a country where I had tried so many times and I could not get off the ground. It was very suffocating for me.
Meanwhile, in an interview with Time magazine last week, Donald Trump said that he would also cut business ties with nations refusing to take back migrants that are going to be deported from the United States.
I'll get them into every country, or we won't do business with those countries. I want them out, and the countries have got to take them back. If they don't take them back, we won't do business with those countries, and we will impose substantial tariffs on them.
Now, the United States has already designated at least 15 nations as uncooperative in the deportation process, with some of the major countries being India, Russia, China, Ukraine, and Cuba. With Donald Trump threatening to impose sanctions on these countries for refusing to take back migrants, Washington could be staring at a global trade war and strained diplomatic tensions. Time and again, prominent economic and business experts have warned that the tariffs would increase the cost of living for average Americans and even impact the U.S. stock market.
It reacts to tariffs, whether or not, they have an impact that could slow growth or create a stickier inflationary environment will be dependent on what's actually implemented. And I'm sure the administration will be very thoughtful about how it proceeds. It's the same thing with immigration policy and deportations.
Now, if Donald Trump goes ahead with his plans of deportations and tariffs, American taxpayers will not just be paying for the high logistical cost of the mass deportations. but even for daily use products, as India and China remain among the 10 trading partners for the United States, particularly for mobile phones, pharmaceutical goods, and other products. And in the Middle East, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu spoke with Donald Trump via phone on Saturday. The two leaders discussed a range of issues, including Israel's efforts to bring back hostages still being held by Hamas in Gaza.
I discussed all of this again last night with my friend, U.S. President-elect Donald Trump. It was a very friendly, very warm, and very important conversation. We talked about the need to complete Israel's victory, and we also talked at length about the efforts we are making to free our hostages. We constantly continue to work tirelessly to return our hostages home, living and dead alike.
Now the call comes days after White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan visited Tel Aviv, met Prime Minister Netanyahu, and indicated that a hostage deal with Hamas could be reached very, very soon.
We've been close before and haven't gotten there, so I can't make any promises or predictions to you. But I wouldn't be here today if I thought this thing was just waiting till after January 20th. I am here today because I believe every day matters, and we are going to use every day we have to try to close the deal as soon as we possibly can.
Now, Hamas is believed to still be holding about 100 hostages in Gaza, including 7 Americans. Meanwhile, the Israeli Prime Minister says he and Donald Trump talked about the crisis in Syria, where rebels overthrew the 50-year Assad regime earlier this month. Notably, Syria's former President Bashar al-Assad shared close ties with Iran and its proxy Hezbollah in Lebanon. With Assad fleeing to Russia, Hezbollah has lost its most important supply route from Iran through Syria, which is used to obtain weapons and attack Israel. Netanyahu says he has no interest in Syria's internal affairs, but is concerned about terrorists taking over near the Israeli-Syria border.
I remind you that for decades Syria was a proactive enemy state to Israel. It attacked us again and again. It allowed others to attack us from its territory. It allowed Iran to arm Hezbollah through its territory. To ensure that what happened will not happen again, we have taken a series of strong actions in the last few days. Together with Defense Minister Katz, I instructed the IDF to thwart the potential threats from Syria and to prevent the takeover of terrorist elements near our border.
Netanyahu's latest comments come after Israeli forces expanded their control of the long-standing buffer zone in the Golan Heights that separates Israel and Syria. The Israeli government has even approved a plan to expand settlements and double the Israeli population in the occupied border area. Israel's recent advances in Syria has drawn ire from neighboring Arab nations and the international community. The claim Netanyahu is exploiting Syria's political instability to seize more territory. However, Israel maintains that these measures are being undertaken to prevent a security fallout. And staying in the Middle East, as rebel forces stormed Syria's capital, the streets of Damascus fell eerily silent. President Bashar al-Assad, whose family had ruled Syria for 5 decades, had vanished. His aides, military commanders, and even his family members were left in the dark. Just hours before he secretly fled to Moscow, the former Syrian president wove a web of lies, assuring his inner circle that Russian support was imminent and to stand their ground. Our next report takes you inside what in fact really happened.
On December 8, 2024, Damascus teetered on collapse. Rebel forces, having swept through Aleppo, Homs and Hama, were closing in. Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, who was once the face of unyielding power, was nowhere to be found, and his sudden disappearance shattered what remained of Syria's crumbling regime.
Hopefully this Friday is the Friday of the greatest joy, a Friday of victory for our Muslim brothers.
However, it was an easy escape. His final days were shrouded in secrecy, and his government, fractured and desperate, held on to Assad's false promises. On November 28th, Assad assured his commanders in Damascus that Russian military aid was imminent. Even though the rebels were advancing, he urged his forces to hold their positions. But heart of hearts, he knew the truth. that Moscow had already refused to intervene.
Well, leaving the process of fulfilling the duties of the head of state was Assad's personal decision, and everything else is without comment.
By Saturday, December 7th, chaos gripped the capital. Government officials scrambled to organize a speech for Assad. His media advisor, Buthena Shaban, arrived at the presidential residence that night to draft it. But to her surprise, she found the house eerily silent and empty. Just hours earlier, his government learnt that their leader had quietly left the country. His destination? Moscow. Shrouded in secrecy, with not a single chance of mistake, Vladimir Putin arranged the former Syrian president's exile plan, which was tightly wrapped under the rug. His flight was arranged by Russian intelligence and flew without a transponder to avoid detection. Even his younger brother, Maher al-Assad, commander of the elite 4th Armored Division, had no idea. Assad's cousins, Ihab and Iyad Makhlouf, were similarly blindsided. After the former Syrian president banished the country, they fled Damascus by car but were ambushed en route to Lebanon. While Ihab was killed, Iyad was wounded. Heart in hand inside the presidential palace, confusion spiraled into panic. His office manager, including many other aides who thought he was going home, were left stunned. Because little did they know that now no instructions would ever come. By 2 a.m., the regime had unraveled. Soldiers abandoned their posts, his government gave up hope, and the city fell into the hands of the rebel forces. Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, the group leading the charge, sought to reassure the city's war-weary residents.
Victory and the liberation of the land is not just about breaking chains or raising flags. It is the birth of a nation, the restoration of dignity, and the writing of history.
Assad, once a symbol of unrelenting power, was now a fugitive. His escape was a stark contrast to his larger-than-life image. Russia, his reluctant host, has provided refuge. Yet Assad's future now seems bleak, a secluded life under tight surveillance.
And now shifting focus back to the United States, tech billionaire Elon Musk has once again reignited the conversation about the potential launch of Xmail, an email service that could rival Apple Mail and Google's Gmail. On Sunday, Musk replied to a post on his social media platform X that suggested an X-based email service would be cool. In response, the Tesla CEO said the idea is on his to-do list, confirming Xmail is in fact under consideration. In another social media post, Musk said the concept of Xmail is interesting, but he needs to rethink how messaging, including emails, works overall. Now, this is not the first time that Musk has floated the idea of launching an email service. In fact, earlier in February, when ex-security engineer Nate McGrady asked when the company would be developing Xmail, the billionaire said, "It's coming." Now, in true Musk fashion, his few words say a lot or nothing at all simultaneously. Though the SpaceX CEO has a history of announcing big updates through casual interactions on X, Musk's recent interaction has surely stirred excitement about Xmail among his followers who are ready to say goodbye to Gmail. Meanwhile, Google's parent company Alphabet says it is exploring artificial intelligence to evolve the experience of its users across services.
The biggest bet we continue to make is actually the application of AI to search and continuing to evolve that experience. And when you have something as beautiful as this, where we can, it's gone from 10 blue links to text search to video search to now we have AI overviews and other things, it keeps evolving, and we're meeting people where they want to be met. It's extraordinary. You can do search, you just take a photo through. How many of you, I'm almost afraid to ask this, how many of you have used Google Lens, where you take a photo and beautiful. Walk down the streets, you find something you're interested in for the holiday, you take a photo, immediately you'll get information. Where can you access it? It's a fabulous way of searching. So that remains important.
Now, last month, Google rolled out an AI-powered feature that helps Gmail users compose grammatically correct professional emails, which comes amid a massive AI and quantum computing push.
We are living in this absolutely extraordinary time. It's a generational opportunity. And when opportunities like this come along, which is very rare, you need to lean into it. And the upside, as we've talked about frequently, is there's economic upside that's in the trillion, 17 to 25 trillion globally are the estimates by 2030 if there's diffusion across industries. It's the ability to address major issues in healthcare and education beyond. It's the ability to push the frontier in science.
Now, only time will tell if and when Musk will launch his own email service looking to end Apple and Gmail's market dominance. And finally, from Iran, where a crackdown on hijab laws has led to the arrest and now the release of a 27-year-old singer. The performer was detained after a bold YouTube performance which got over 1.4 million views. The singer performed without a hijab, defying the Islamic Republic's strict dress code. Her arrest, alongside two male musicians, highlights the regime's growing repression of women's rights and artistic freedom. Now free, her courageous act has sparked international outrage and renewed calls for gender equality in Iran. Our final report brings you more on the ongoing fight for freedom.
Just days after Iran's government reinforced its strict hijab laws, authorities made their first major move by arresting a female YouTuber whose virtual concert defied the Islamic Republic's dress code. However, in a dramatic turn of events, Parastu Ahmadi, the 27-year-old singer at the center of the controversy, has now been released, sparking celebrations among her supporters and renewed calls for change. Ahmadi was detained after her YouTube performance amassed over 1.4 million views. Clad in a long black sleeveless dress, she delivered a soulful concert accompanied by 4 male musicians. 2 of her bandmates, Sohail Faghi Nasiri and Ehsan Beragdar, were also arrested, marking another escalation in the regime's crackdown on women's rights activists and artists. Before the concert, Ahmadi opened with a heartfelt message.
Hello friends, I hope everyone is doing well. Tonight, I and my friends are having a live performance for you. And the arranger of some of the pieces that we will perform tonight is a rereading, and it is familiar to many of you. I hope you like the performance, and wherever you are in this world, be well and be happy.
Then, while releasing her video, she wrote another heartfelt note. I am Parastu, a girl who wants to sing for the people I love. This is a right I could not ignore, singing for the land I love passionately. Her words resonated deeply, turning her into a symbol of resistance in a country where women's freedom remains severely curtailed. Soon after the video was released and it went viral on social media platforms, Ahmadi was arrested in Sari city while her 2 other bandmates were detained from Tehran. Her lawyer, Milad Panahipur, initially expressed frustration. However, her sudden release has brought a glimmer of hope amid the ongoing suppression of dissent.
Unfortunately, we do not know the charges against Ms. Ahmadi, who arrested her, or her place of detention, but we will follow up on the matter through legal authorities.
The incident recalls the tragic story of Jina Mahsa Amini, whose death in police custody in 2022 ignited a wave of nationwide protests. Thousands of Iranian women took to the streets, removing their headscarves in defiance of the regime. The protests were met with a brutal crackdown. Yet they underscored a growing demand for change among Iran's younger generation.
There have been serious human rights violations in connection with the protests. They include unlawful deaths, extrajudicial executions, unnecessary and disproportionate use of force, arbitrary arrest, torture and ill treatment, rape and sexual violence, enforced disappearance, and gender persecution, intersecting with ethnic and religious grounds. We also found that some of these acts were conducted in the context of a widespread and systematic attack, particularly against women and girls, but also others expressing support for equality and rights.
Ahmadi's arrest and now her release comes at a time when the regime is doubling down on its enforcement of hijab laws, seeing them as a critical tool to maintain control in an era dominated by social media. Ahmadi herself is yet to make a public statement since her release, but her silence has not dimmed the impact of her courageous act. Social media is flooded with messages of support, praising her for shining a light on the resilience of Iranian women. Now, whether her act of defiance sparks further change or provokes more crackdowns, one thing is certain. Parastu Ahmadi's voice has become a powerful symbol of hope and resistance in a nation that's yearning for freedom.
That's our show for today. We certainly thank all of you for tuning in. We look forward to seeing you right back here again tomorrow. Thanks again, everyone, for watching. Donald Trump's return to the Oval Office is imminent. He will soon take the oath of office and once again lead the nation.
God spared my life for a reason.
President-elect Donald Trump's first priority: tackling illegal immigration and securing the nation's borders.
We're going to fix our borders.
The incoming administration has prioritized the Russia-Ukraine war. Can they succeed in ending one of the world's most challenging conflicts?
I will have the horrible war between Russia and Ukraine settled.
And as he returns to the White House, will Donald Trump resume a bruising trade war with the world's second largest economy, China?
If China or some other country is behaving badly, we have things called tariffs.
All of this and more right here on First Post America.